Five men left a basketball game on a cold night in February of 1978. They were smiling. They were relaxed. They were talking about getting home. None of them ever did. What happened to them became one of the strangest and most disturbing unsolved mysteries in American history. This case is known as the Yuba County Five. And even after decades of investigation, interviews, and theories, nothing fully explains what happened that night. On February 24, 1978, five friends attended a college basketball game. Their names were Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Weiher, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias. They were not criminals. They were not drifters. They were men who lived structured lives. Most of them had mild intellectual disabilities, but they were independent, responsible, and deeply routine-oriented. They held jobs. They attended programs together. They followed schedules carefully. Breaking routine was rare. That night, they were excited. The basketball game was a big event for them. They talked about stopping for snacks afterward. They talked about getting home early because one of them had a tournament. Everything about that night suggested normality. After the game ended, the five men got into Jack Madruga's car, a Mercury Montego, and began driving home. The drive should have taken less than an hour, but something happened along the way. Instead of heading west toward home, the car turned east, toward the mountains, toward freezing temperatures, toward isolation. To this day, no one knows why. The next morning, families immediately knew something was wrong. These men were extremely dependable. They never missed work. They never disappeared without explanation. Searches began quickly. Friends, family members, and police spread out across highways and back roads. Days passed. Then, 4 days later, the car was found. Jack Madruga's car was discovered abandoned on a remote mountain road in Plumas National Forest. The location made no sense. The road was unpaved. It was snow-covered. It was miles from any logical route home, but the car itself was perfectly fine. It was not stuck. It had gas. The battery worked. Investigators later confirmed the car could have been driven away easily. Inside the car were candy wrappers, soda bottles, and personal items. Nothing suggested a struggle. The keys were gone. The five men were gone. This discovery raised disturbing questions. Why would they abandon a working car in freezing conditions? Why would they walk away instead of staying inside for warmth? Why drive into the mountains at all? None of it fit their personalities. Search teams expanded into the surrounding wilderness. Snow made progress painfully slow. The terrain was brutal. Steep slopes, dense forest, temperatures far below freezing. Weeks passed with no sign of the men. Then, when the snow began to melt months later, the truth started to emerge. The first remains were found scattered across the mountains. Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga were discovered miles apart. Both had died from exposure. They were missing shoes. Their clothing was torn. Their paths suggested confusion, not purpose. It appeared they had wandered aimlessly through the forest. Another body was later found, Jack Hewitt. He too had died from hypothermia. He was far from the car, far from safety, far from any clear explanation. But the most disturbing discovery came months later. Deep in the forest, searchers found a small cabin used by forest workers. Inside the cabin, they found Ted Weiher. He was wrapped in blankets. He had been alive for weeks, long enough to grow a beard, long enough to lose over 100 pounds. Ted had starved to death. This discovery shocked investigators. Inside the cabin were supplies, canned food, dehydrated meals, a propane heater, matches, enough resources to survive for months. Yet Ted never opened the cans. The food was untouched. The heater had barely been used. Why would a man starve to death surrounded by food? Even more disturbing, Ted's shoes were neatly placed beside him. His feet were wrapped carefully. Another man's jacket was draped over his body. This meant someone else had been alive after Ted. Someone had cared for him. Someone had left. That someone was likely Gary Mathias. Gary was never found. No remains, no clothing, no trace. He vanished completely. Investigators struggled to make sense of the timeline. Why did the men leave the car? Why did they walk deeper into the mountains instead of downhill toward towns? Why did Ted not eat? Why did someone leave him alive and then disappear? Every answer created more questions. Some theories suggest the men became disoriented. Others believe they encountered someone on the road. There were reports of a strange man in the area that night. Some believe fear triggered a chain reaction of poor decisions. Others believe Gary Mathias panicked and fled. But none of these theories explain everything. Years passed. Families waited. Hope faded. The case slowly became legend, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quietly horrifying. To this day, the cabin still stands. The road where the car was found still exists, and no one can explain why 5 men chose the mountains over safety. The Yuba County Five did not vanish suddenly. They made choices, but those choices do not make sense, and that is what makes this case so disturbing. Some mysteries fade with time. This one grows heavier, because somewhere between that basketball game and that frozen mountain road, something went terribly wrong.